Hey everybody, it's Galmadex, and welcome back to the final premiere draft of Amonkhet Remastered this go around. So hopefully we can end it with a bang here. It'd be super sweet to be able to open up a Bolas just one time, and our first rare would go great in that kind of deck. Rags to Riches is a card we got a 7-win run with before. Card is pretty busted. If you build around it and play a pretty controlling deck, or at least a deck with a lot of higher toughness creatures, it's going to be a somewhat one-sided board wipe that also steals one of your opponent's creatures later in the game. Now, they get to choose what creature they're going to give you, but the usual play pattern is that you end up casting Rags, and by the time you cast Riches, they had to reestablish a board after a board wipe, so they only have like one or two creatures anyway, so they have to give you quite a bit of value. So Rags to Riches is an excellent card, and I'm super happy to start with that towards another blue-black controlling build. For pick 2, we now have a Countervailing Winds to go with it. That should be pretty great. This is a flexible counterspell, and one of the main mechanics in the format is the cycling mechanic that can make sure that your graveyard is full enough for this to be able to counter spells pretty much throughout the game. But if you're ever in a situation where your graveyard is not big enough, that is where the flexibility comes in, where you just cycle it itself, discard it, and draw a card. So I like Countervailing Winds to go with the Rags to Riches. Certainly more important and less filler than your Doomed Dissenter style, just here's a couple chump blocks sort of card. So let's grab the Countervailing Winds and see where to go from here. Pick number 3, we've now got a Doomfall that's pretty great. If we want to go Esper, Farm to Market is pretty great value. I don't generally like running more than 2 colors in this format because the fixing's really not there. I mean, there's just Evolving Wilds at common. Outside of that, all the fixing is in green. So I don't really do splashing around unless, like, we open a Bolas, then obviously I'll play Grixis. Or if I'm playing green, obviously we can do a lot of splashing. So I think we have to go Doomfall over Farm to Market, even though Farm to Market is the better card for its specific color pair. We are trying to be Demir here, and Doomfall is pretty close to as good. Obviously, when your opponent has some creature tokens on board, it's pretty bad at hitting anything on board, but then you get to exile something from their hand instead. The odds of neither half of this card being good are relatively low, so pretty great stuff. Pick number 4. Yeah, still looking solid here. We've got Heckma Sentinels, Hieroglyphic Illumination for pretty premium stuff for the blue-black deck. Because we're a little more controlling here, playing to the board a little less, I think I'm just going to take the card advantage of Hieroglyphic Illumination. Pretty flexible. If it's in your opener and you're on like a 2-lander, you just immediately cycle it, try to get to that 3rd land quicker. But if you do have it a little later in the game, draw 2 is great. And since it's instant speed, it helps you hold up your counter spells pretty well. And speaking of counter spells, Essence Scatter's a pretty great one. Even Initiate would be fine in this deck. It's generally a really good value play. The only issue I have with it is it's 2 or less toughness to the Rags, but because it embalms later, that's not that big of a downside. You're still going to get a full creature back out of it later in the game. So even Initiate and Essence Scatter both look fantastic here. And pick 5 Farm to Market's a decent sign towards blue-white if we didn't have such a powerful card trying to lock us into blue-black. I think I'm just going to go Essence Scatter here and just be really annoying, really controlly, be as low creature count as possible, but even Initiate would be very, very reasonable. Pick number 6, nice little filler chumper with the Festering Mummy. It's going to chump block something and leave a permanent debuff on the board with that -1/-1 counter, which is nice. Alternatively, we could dip a little bit into white, but all the good white cards here are aggressive, and all of our blue cards and our black cards are defensive, so they're not going to jam super well together. Just a bunch of really good white aggro cards and then blue counter spells and card draw, or good white aggro cards and a board wipe and removal spell. I mean, the removal spell part's not bad in an aggro deck, but certainly the counter spells and card draw and stuff. I'm just going to stick to our initial plan still. Pretty locked in here. Pick 7, Wasp of the Bitter End is fine. Just an evasive threat. Anointer Priest is actually quite good and might be worth speculating because Wasp is just okay. The problem with Wasp is that with only 1 toughness, it dies to a light breeze, and there are multiple ways in this format to kill a 1 toughness creature for really good value, like a removal spell that puts a -1/-1 counter onto 2 different creatures, so they would like permanently kill this and debuff another one of our creatures forever, or just like, 1 mana removal that kills this, I think I'd rather just take the sturdy booty of the Anointer Priest, and it's also a particularly good card for a blue-white deck, but pick 8, we're back to locked in, because Vile Manifestation is quite the win condition for a blue-black cycling deck, and it survives our board wipe of Rags because it's got 4 toughness, and pick 8 Desert of the Mindful and Desert of the Glorified is also a really good sign. You can pick these deserts very highly in almost any archetype, but especially in archetypes that care about cycling, like blue-black, or archetypes that care about deserts. So pick number 9. This is a miss. We'll take an Ancient Crab just to cut people off of Dimir. White definitely seems like the most open color in the pod, but again, our spot here in blue-black is looking pretty good. I guess... No, I probably will take Compelling Argument. Worst case scenario, it's just a 1-mana draw card that buffs the Vile Manifestations, cycles towards it. Rare draft a Shatterstorm. Grab a Miasmic Mummy I would like to cut. And see what pack 2 has to offer. Dispossess. That's a super expensive discard spell, so I'm not that interested in that. Bone Picker I'm not the most interested in controlling decks either, because the easiest way to consistently cast this for cheap is to trade creatures off on the aggressive, because otherwise, like, you have to spend a bunch of mana casting a removal spell and then also the one to cast this. So getting the cost reduction is not that consistent in non-aggressive decks. So honestly, I might just take Desert of the Mindful super highly. Cartouche of Ambition's also great, but for the cartouches, you need a good creature count, because if you don't have a creature on board, this is going to be stuck in your hand doing absolutely nothing. And currently we have an incredibly low creature count. So as powerful as this is, if we go really controlling and really low creature count, it's just not going to be right for this deck. So I'm just going to grab Desert of the Mindful, which will definitely be good no matter what. Pack 2, pick 2. Now a Shimmer Scale Drake's another good cycler to fill the grave for Vile Manifestation, but Flyers play well in the format as well, so just hard casting it as a 5-mana 3/4 Flyers also quite spicy. Pretty happy with that. Some fun other options. The green-black -1/-1 counter deck is pretty good when you have a rare like Hapatra to spit out a bunch of snakes and stuff. Without a really good build around like Hapatra, the deck falls apart a little bit, but Hapatra's a great reason to be in that archetype, so she's quite fun. Chef at Munner is awesome for all of the green splashy decks. Pulls out a desert, puts it on the battlefield as well, so all your cards that care about deserts get buffs there. Card's pretty sweet. Pick 3, another Shimmer Scale Drake pretty easily. And this time there actually isn't even anything interesting off color. I think Shimmer Scale Drake's probably the best card in the pack. Honestly, weirdly enough, Sacred Cat, just for being a 2-for-1 coming back so quickly and so efficiently, it's probably the next best card. It's a relatively weak pack. Shimmer Scale Drake, Sacred Cat, maybe like Bitter Bow, Sharpshooters are all decent. Pick 4. Another Essence Scatter here, or another Shimmer Scale Drake, or actually Winds of Rebuke's playable in the set. Reduced to Rubble's not terrible, even if you can't cast a Rubble. Just counter unless they pay 3 is fine. I'm a little higher on Scatter and Drake. I don't know about Winds of Rebuke. I haven't been playing a lot of those. I don't think I've played a single copy this return trip, but I've played against it and it's done some somewhat nasty things, so I do think it plays pretty well. But I don't know. Go all instants here. Let's grab another Scatter. Pick 5, another Hieroglyphic Illumination, Desert of the Glorified, Striped Riverwinder. These are all fantastic options. Let's get a little more finishers in here. Let's grab that Riverwinder. This is an excellent finisher because in creature light decks like this, your opponent is going to naturally end up with just a bunch of removal clumped up in their hand because you're not playing creatures. So if your end game threat is just like a 3/4 flyer or something, then they'll have plenty of removal to throw at it. But if your endgame threat has hexproof, then you can put them in a really rough position where all the removal they've been holding on to just doesn't even do anything. So I like the Riverwinder quite a bit. And obviously the flexibility, because it's a 7-drop, of being able to cycle it when it's in your opening hand is very important as well. Now we can grab Seeker of Insight, which is good at filtering through the deck. just as we're casting non-creature spells, which is going to be very often. Failure's probably playable even without access to Comply, but not super exciting. Pick 7. All right, we'll try Windsor Rebuke here. Riddle Form. Never super into those kind of cards. I like animate, turn into creatures now and then. Ooh, we get to be the mill deck. Ipnu Rivulet. So now we need to take deserts pretty highly, but the Rivulet gives us a win condition that doesn't even require attacking or blocking. It doesn't require casting any spells, so they can't even counter it. We can turn into a mill deck here, where that compelling argument is 100% making the cut now. So we just gain control of the board, make sure we're not under any pressure, and then start sacking a desert every turn for a mill 4. You only need to activate this thing like 3 times to win the long game. Mill 12? You do have to wait quite a few turns, but it's a big mill card, and I actually think I'm going to be on Seer of the Last Tomorrow over Heckma Sentinels at that point. We'll go for a full-on We Are the Villains mill deck. Pick 10. Cycle this Unburden for decent value. Pick 11, there's the Dune Beetle. Early game blocker that survives Rags. And it's time for pack 3, pick 1 Nico Bolas. Come on. Come on, gods of RNG. Ooh, pick 13 Hieroglyphic Illumination is a huge pickup for this deck. No Bolas for us, but we do get another Doomfall, and that's a perfectly reasonable option. Tragic. We didn't get to play a Bolas on this return trip. Oof, we did get a cruel reality, though. You have to survive till you get to 7 mana, but if you get there, this is a guaranteed win condition over time. You slap this on your opponent, they're gonna die in a few turns. It's going to keep forcing them to sack creatures or planeswalkers or take 5 damage. So, yep, that's a fun control win condition. We will absolutely take that. Wow, I don't think Bantu's actually any good in this deck because our creature count is so low. We can't really do the sacking and getting all that kind of stuff, but getting past a lot of great black from this direction, which is nice. I'm just going to take the counterspell that cycles. The Censor here looks really good. But yeah, Bonsu's pretty fun, just really doesn't work in this deck. I'd like some targeted removal here. We have stuff where they choose what they exile, and we have counter spells for if the stuff hasn't resolved. But I need a couple ways to blow up something that's on the board if we're lucky. That's what we're looking for out of the last pack here. Okay, I've got double Essence Scatter and Censor, and Countervailing Winds. A little interested in another Shimmer Scale Drake, upping the cycling count over the Essence Scatter at that point. Yeah, I guess if we find another Winds of Rebuke kind of card that lets us bounce something, that'll also work, just so we can bounce something and then counter it later. So that'd be another way to deal with something that has resolved. Crab back in for now. I'm not going to play the Mummy, though. Yeah, I imagine this crab probably gets cut. It's just a worse Seer of the Last Tomorrow. It's harder to cast and it doesn't mill. It has 1 more toughness, but that is highly unlikely to be relevant. Another Countervailing Winds looks excellent. Join us. Supreme Will is excellent. This is a counterspell with the built-in backup plan of that card draw when your opponent doesn't cast anything with their open mana. I'm looking for some deserts, but definitely not colorless deserts. So we're not seeing any Desert of the Mindful or Desert of the Glorified here, which is a bummer. That means the Ipnu Rivulet win condition is not going to be as big, but we still have plenty of others now that we got this cruel reality in the deck. We don't need to mill our opponent out every game. Multiple different ways to win. Rags to Riches to get really far ahead, kill them with their own creature. Striped Riverwinder at the top end, and Cruel Reality. And then obviously we could also, if the game goes really long, still find a mill win. This can mill 8 cards with the 2 deserts, plus we have a mill 5 on Compelling Argument, and mill however many until they kill this thing. So, could still theoretically um, get a mill win at some point. And take another Illumination. We've got a lot of counter spells here, so instant speed card draw looks beautiful. 28 cards, 2 of them are lands, so we're at 26 non-lands. We want to cut 3. Dune Beetle, Ancient Crab, looking real filler. Another Windsor Rebuke is beautiful with all these counter spells. Definitely join the party. Unburden is not great either. Essentially just in here to get cycled. Yeah, probably these 3. 24 non-land cards. I still need to cut 1 more to be at 17 lands, getting towards these 7 drops. In theory, this deck would play fine with 16 because of all these cyclers. Like, I can cycle these on 1 and 2. Here's another Illumination. Yeah, I guess I have enough stuff that I'm just, like, cycling for 1 mana. You know what? Horror of the Broken Lands is probably better than Seer the Last Tomorrow here with the small amount of mill we have. Yeah, we'll take Horror. Yeah, no, there's more than enough 1 mana cyclers. We can go for a 16 land deck even with a 7 drop in here. I guess a couple 7 drops. We also want to cast Riches from the Grave. You know, Naga Oracle's actually pretty nice as well. In these controlling decks, you set up your draws and just put a brick wall on the board. So that is an option to consider as we move into the deck building. Alright, let's cut a land and go 16 lands here. So we need to cut 3 non-land cards. I guess, you know, while it's fine in this kind of deck, it's just, without synergy, we just drop these random cards. Because we have to cut something. Yeah, seems fine. This is some cheap cyclers, if we need them. Good chunk of top end there. We might just cut, like, all the creatures here. Not even do the Seer of the Last Tomorrow thing. I mean, Ipnu Rivulet alone is enough to make sure that our opponent mills out before us. I guess unless we hard cast every Illumination to draw a ton of cards. Yeah, I guess because we're doing a lot of cycling, we'll still mill out before our opponent, unless we, like, Rivulet our opponent and Desert Rivulet them for the mill 8, or, like, cast Argument and Rivulet them once, but don't really think I need Seer of the Last Tomorrow. I think we have non-mill win cons. And Rivulet is still enough to be the mill win con in, like, the mirror match if our opponent doesn't have their own Rivulet. Yeah, I want to build it like this. Very controlling, very low creature count. Not the kind of deck you see too often nowadays, especially in my videos. But hey, that's the fun of going back to these flashback sets where these kind of archetypes are pretty viable. Yeah, we'll call it a deck here and hop into the gameplay. Alright, here we are on the draw for game number 1 against another blue deck. Got the turn 2 Sunset Pyramid for the draw 3, and then a bunch of scry throughout the game. That's already a sketchy start for a card advantage focused mirror match. They go for the scry instead of the card draw here. Interesting. Alright. Oh, I think it was a misclick. They went for the oops there. Let's cycle this desert. Got 4 lands in hand already. Most expensive spell is 5 mana. Labyrinth Guardian. That is going to 2-for-1 us. If we counter it, I don't think I want to do that then. Just take 2 damage. For a little while, I can still Shimmer Scale Drake and stuff. And that should win the race later. Especially if they remain stuck on mana. Go to 18. Alright, the full-on draw card this time. They did hit their swamp, and there's the Ruthless Sniper. That actually has a really good ability. There's no way that resolves. Every cycle turns into a permanent -1/-1 counter as well as the card draw. So pretty nasty. We're going to drop this while they're tapped out. Force them to cast a removal spell on it instead of a counter spell. Just lowers the amount of cards they could have against it there. Trial of Ambition. Well, that's about the worst case scenario because trials are incredible, where they basically don't even have to spend a card on it, because if they play a cartouche, they put that trial back into their hand. That's actually such a terrible case scenario that I don't think I'm playing another creature until I have Supreme Will up, so if they do try to cast a cartouche, I can just counter that. Although this card is also incredible, so I feel I have to counter this. Okay, there's the Doomfall to exile the Guardian. They don't get to embalm it or anything, which is nice. Yeah, I don't really want to just play a single creature against a Trial of Ambition here. We might be on the full-on mill plan. I'm holding up a counter spell here, but I can pretend to at least. Or I can just mill them 5 and get that mana out of the way. I think later in the game I should have plenty of mana to sit around with. Vile Manifestation. Alright, that's a nightmare. Oh, it's only an 0-4 right now, surprisingly. But if I start milling them, it's super bad, and they are likely to have tons of cyclers in hand with the way their deck is, with Vizier, Sniper, and Manifestation. Kind of the dream. I guess I should have cycled first in case I hit a counterspell. Yeah, that's brutal. That's on me. Yeah, I kind of forgot my deck has like 10 counter spells and like 2 removal spells. We definitely should have cycled while it was on the stack instead of at the end step. And we're likely to get punished for that, but for now, again, 0 power. So we'll see. Cycle the Scorpion. 22 cards left over there. Strategic Planning. I actually like that a lot. That's a mill 3. 19 cards left there. It's definitely a mill matchup. The White Source. Alright. We take 1 damage. Shimmer Scale Drake. I have the mana to cast this and hold up my countervailing winds, so I think we do that. Force like a cartouche or something from them, and then we counter the cartouche so that the trial doesn't come back. New Perspectives. I like it when you draw 3 more. Down to 15 cards? Yep. And we take no damage this turn. I'm kind of tempted to hold on to Compelling Argument just so that they might do more cycling here. Activate Sunset Pyramid again, just so they are just might not be worried about milling out. Yeah, 13 life, I think we are way more likely to mill them out than beat them with combat damage. So I'm just going to hold the Drake back here and force them to cycle 3 more cards if they want to actually get through the Drake. Yep, which is milling 3 more cards. Mill a Riverwinder. Even Wind Guide. Creature tokens have flying and vigilance. Probably bad enough to just delay it for now since it has too much toughness to kill with rags. They can embalm it back, but that'll take their whole next turn. Another countervailing winds. Cool. We find our rivulet. They're already pretty much milled. That's a mill 9, and they have 11 cards. We can mill them down to 2 cards left in deck if we find rivulet. Cartouche of Ambition. That is the auto counter here. Counter unless they pay 9. Yep, that does not resolve. You are not picking up your Trial of Ambition, and you are certainly not getting +1/+1 lifelink on a Vile Manifestation. Nice try. Wait, hold up. 9 cards in their grave? Yeah, we have the countervailing winds. Their countervailing winds. Cool. Cartouche of Knowledge too? Gross. Yikes. Yeah, Trials and Cartouches will do that to you. That might be our death sentence here. Like, locked in for the mill win if it were not for the Cartouche Trial combo. Oh, they didn't attack, though. Oh, and we drew Winds of Rebuke while they're tapped out? That's... Never mind. What a game. That's just going to flip it right back in our favor. That's massive. The mill is huge, too. They have 8 cards left. Big yikes. Do I want to Compelling Argument them here just in case they're running the somebody discards to? They'll know to never cast anything that draws a card again, but they have to kill me in 3 turns. Regardless. Yeah. I'm getting a little nervous here, just in case. Unburden is a card in this format. Target player discards 2. And this is probably enough to kill them. They have 2 cards left in turn. They have 2 attacks available. Single 3/3. And 3/4. That's 6 damage. The Doomfall's a huge draw. Do I exile from their hand here? 2 cards left in the deck. They can't cycle anymore to make the manifestation any bigger. No, we exile from board. We exile from board. There'd be an argument for exiling from their hand if we were worried about them doing some big cycle loop thing. But, like, they can't do that or they just mill out. They have 1 card left now. 2 attacks to kill me. We're at 10 life. They need to put 7 more power on board. And it has to be all with more than 2 toughness. That's 5 more power. That's not that's not enough. And the Rivulet top deck. Goodbye, last card in your library. And that is a victory in the mirror match, as we said before. Just a little bit of incidental mill is enough to win in the cycling mirror match because your opponent casts a lot of card draw and cycling and stuff, and the games tend to go really long, as they did there, because neither of us puts that much pressure on the board till pretty late in the game. I mean, I guess technically they did attempt to put a lot of pressure on the board early. The Shadowstorm Vizier would have been hitting for quite a bit. That would have been pretty spooky. Wind Guide and stuff like that. We did delay a lot of the pressure, but Again, certainly not an aggressive deck by the slightest. All right. We start things off 1-0, heading into game number 2. All right, here we are for game 2 on the draw again. Opponent is on a red deck, starting with that Desert of the Fervent. That makes me a little nervous here. I'm just going to play this Desert. We are trying to get to at least 4 mana for Hieroglyphic Illumination. Yep, green-red on the play here. This will be a little spooky. No counterspells up yet, but we can Winds of Rebuke so that the countervailing winds will be good next turn. Probably want to wait and counter their 3-drop. Yep. That's going to cost them a lot of time. They're going to not have the cost reduction on their next creature, and they're going to have to recast a 3-drop instead of a 2-drop. Doesn't mean the counter's going to hit me for 2 instead of 1, but we can pretend they played a 2-mana 2/2, and that's what I'm taking damage by. Am I going to want to countervailing winds the monument itself? Probably not. So I think I should just Doomfall the counter, maybe? I mean, it survives a Rags to Riches, so, like, it's not like it's going to get hit by the board wipe or anything later. Yeah, I'm just going to Doomfall the Kenra. And then what plays really well about this is that next turn, we get to hold up the countervailing winds with the draw 2 as our plan if they don't cast something we need to counter. This turn, if we hold up the countervailing winds and we don't counter something, we're not doing anything with our mana, so... If they just recast the monument and we decide, I want to save the counter for something else, then it's just not going to work well. Alright, that dies to Rags if we find it. And we do have a lot of card draw in hand. It's also too small to get through the Shimmer Scale Drake, which is nice. But we're under pressure now. We're on a 9-turn clock, taking 2 damage a turn, with no way to deal with the Entangler right now. Not till we can cast Drake. This does feel like a matchup where I'm unlikely to try to mill win them. So maybe I should have just cycled this argument by now. To make sure that we find our cards that actually impact the board quicker. Exert is wild here. That means it's going to hit me for 3 over the course of this turn and next turn, instead of 2 and then 2, which would be 4 damage over the course of 2 turns. It's actually just more damage to not exert if your opponent doesn't have a blocker. But that might mean they have, like... what am I thinking here? They might have stuff to, like, untap it, I guess. That's also big enough to survive Rags, which is why I just countered it there. I'm going to go ahead and cycle Compelling Argument. I do think this is a matchup. I just need to find cards that affect the board faster. Okay, now... I mean, that's exerted, so let's just pass here. If it weren't exerted, I might want to just drop Drake, and they have to deal with Drake to get any damage in, but since that's just going to be tapped anyway, let's hold up the counterspell and Illumination. It's probably all removal in our opponent's hand. Feels like. 1 mana from Riverwinder. I do not have the mana to play Drake and hold up the counterspell. I can take another 2. We'll go to 13 here. And then Illumination should definitely get us land 7, and then green-red shouldn't have a way to kill a 5/5 hexproof. Unless they, like, combat trick up the Entangler. Alright, this time they did not exert it. So they are going for slightly more damage over time. Uh-oh. Those are not the land. I have to cycle one of these Drakes to really make sure I can Riverwind. Yep, there we go. Can super Riverwind. Here it is. Now you have to have a combat trick to go with that Entangler to get through this. Then I get to play a Vile Manifestation holding up a Countervailing Winds next turn. Counter unless they pay 9. Feels good. And if I don't counter, I cast the Illumination. I actually have enough mana to play the Drake hold up the Countervailing Winds. Instead, if I want to do that... Ooh, Gilded Ceradon. Oh, it can't stop Riverwinder from blocking, though, so... It's actually fine. I was going to say that's actually pretty scary when the shields are down, but... It can't target the Riverwinder, so it's a 4/4 that attacks into a 5/5. Oh, unless they do that, then we just trade off here. At 13 life, I think we just trade off. It's a 2-for-1 trade. We kill the Ceradon and the Cartouche here. Yeah, I don't want to go down to 8. Lose my Hexproofer, but I've got counter spells to protect my other creatures, and a lot of creatures here. A lot of card draw with Illumination to stay ahead. I'm going to cast Manifestation over Drake because I can Illumination casting that, instead of just holding up Countervailing Winds. This way, if they don't have something to kill the Manifestation, I'm still doing something with all my mana. They do have something to kill it, so Countervailing Winds it is. This is counter unless they pay infinite, pretty much, at this point. Yep. More lands than they even have is on board. More than twice as many lands as they have on board is how much they'd have to pay. 11 now. We actually turning the corner and just jamming? Because I can play a Drake and hold up Illumination, so they still have to play another removal spell to kill the Drake, and even if they do that, they hit me for 2. I think we're actually just jamming here. I guess I probably should have just Illumination main phase for 1 extra point of damage, but this is a 3-turn kill already. It's not changing the clock. It's not changing the math of how fast we're going to kill them. It could, though, if that's the only hit the Manifestation gets in and the rest of the damage has to be dealt in increments of 3 by Shimmer Scale Drakes or something like that. I guess the question here is, how much is the fear of a counterspell worth? Alright, go ahead and combat trick my Drake. Or don't, that's cool too. Magma Spray at post-combat or something? Cartouche of Strength. Yeah, I guess we don't win that fight. This is too expensive to play and have the Winds of Rebuke up. I could cycle this if I draw into Winds of Rebuke and then they just like die on the spot, but this is fine. It's really not a bad deal. We still killed the Entangler and got the fight spell out of the way. Kinda have to chump here. Because I could mill myself with the Rivulet, right? So if they don't chump here, we could randomly kill them. Oh, let's go for it, because that'd be cool. Here's 10 damage. Oh no. Here's 11 damage. Here's 13 damage. Or sorry, 12 damage. I just need 1 cycler in the top 4 now. That extra, extra flexibility of the Rivulet for the self-mill. 1 cycler. Yeah! 3 swamps and a cycler, let's go! Oh wait, no! The cycler was the desert! Because I could sack a cycler, I actually got to lock that in. Ooh, that's nasty. That's some fancy nonsense from Vile Manifestation. The 2-mana 13/4. Pretty good stat line. We are 2-0 heading into game 3. Here we are for game 3. I don't know how long this Vile Manifestation is for the world, because if they have any removal, you just slam it at that thing immediately, and we don't have any counter spells that can counter removal in this hand. It's just counter spells for creatures. But I still enjoy the Vile Manifestation. Well, now I have a Countervailing Winds, but I didn't have it in the opener, so I didn't just like cycle an Illumination on one, so it's not going to actually counter anything turn 3, which is rough. It's counter unless they pay 0 right now. Awkward. But maybe we can scatter something next turn if they play anything too big for Rags. And that can fill the grave for the wins. Ooh, that's small enough for Rags. I like to see that. Can Doomfall their hand. And I can still block this Minotaur. That would make them discard another card, and then when I Rags them, they're so far behind later. Actually, kind of like that. Let's see what's in their hand. A bunch of creatures that die to Rags. Then an Open Fire and a Trial of Solidarity. Those are all kind of spooky. I guess Trial's the scariest one because it's repeatable over time. They could play it right now to lock in damage with Minotaur. They could Open Fire the Manifestation. I can still win the long game with Rags. I'll get rid of Trial. I mean, I guess they, one for one, they discard whatever they want to kill this Manifestation here. If I block Minotaur, yeah, I guess I'm actually just not blocking Minotaur, really. Just so I have something to block Gustwalker until I draw the second black. Yeah. Scatter's not a terrible draw. I can cycle one of these Illuminations and still have Scatter up. Countervailing wins for 1. I guess we hold that up in case they drew something crazy. Alright, send in the team. Probably block and then countervailing wins the Open Fire, right? So they can post-combat Open Fire the Manifestation. This way we keep it on board. The only rough part here is if I had one more mana, I could have cycled an Illumination to eat the Archer for free and then still had this counterspell up. So we could have eaten the Archer and kept the Manifestation, but if I can only do one or the other, I'd rather keep the Manifestation since the Archer would die to Rags anyway. I'm down to 9, though, for playing this slow. I've got a Windsor Rebuke up. Even cycling Illumination right now. Windsor Rebuke or Scatter, yeah. So I'm going to cycle one now. Alright, it's land for turn and I can Rags next turn. We're good. We did it. And now Archer definitely doesn't attack, so we just take 2 here. I don't think I block because I want them to tap out to play the Elite. Yeah, so that we can kill that with the Rags as well. I could... Technically, I have good cards in hand to block there. But it's just that, like, I just want them to play into the Rags anyway. But, in theory, I could, like, block it, and then they discard a card to buff it, and then I just Winds of Rebuke it back to their hand, and they're real far behind. And if I'm that scared of it, I can scatter it when they recast it. Alright, double Rebuke, double Scatter, we are golden. If I top deck a single land, I can Illumination and still have a Scatter up. But I'd have to do it during my turn so that I can play that land. Yeah, I think I do that. Worst case scenario, I'm taking 1 damage for doing this. By not hitting the land. Dang. It's kind of rough. I have 2 just absolute win conditions with 7 mana now, so I think I'm just cycling this. Trying to play land for turn. Sick. So that if I hit a land again next turn, I'm at the 7 drops and I'm in at the winning point. You know what? I would rather stop 1 damage than attack for 4. Open Fire the face. They have 4 damage to face. Nope, Talk Crop Elite is the play. Doomfall. 1 mana off from the 7-drop finishers, so it's going to be Rebuke the Elite, Hold Up Scatter. Likely. I could Rebuke the Fanbearer and Doomfall the Elite, actually. Or Rebuke the Elite and Doomfall it. I guess that way I get to see what their other card in hand is, so that's maybe slightly better. Sure. Let's see what their other card is then. It's another fan bearer. So we kill the elite. Because they only have 4 lands, these fan bearers aren't fantastic. Again, I'd rather stop 1 damage than hit for 5. Because 1 damage could mean I'm dead to a open fire later. That's land 7. So, Winds of Rebuke plus Scatter the Scrapper. I'm now taking 1 a turn from Fan Bearers. And then next turn I Riches one of the Fan Bearers and we're good. And then we Cruel Reality after that. Because if I Cruel Reality now, they're just going to take 5 for a few turns. Oh, wait, no, they don't get the choice. They have to sack things to this? Okay. I still can't do this right now, because if I don't deal with Scrapper, I'm dead immediately. So I have to rebuke the Scrapper. So I'll do it right now. I don't think there's any hexproof tricks in white in this format, but my memory's not good enough to not play around that. Ooh, we milled an open fire. That feels good. It's also kind of sketchy, because that means they have a lot of them. Ooh, they hit the land, so they get to play the Scrapper and get 1 damage in. 1 fan bear taps Manifestation, the other one attacks for 1. Oh. Oh, that's the concession. That was they were getting tired of this control nonsense. They just were clicking through phases quickly and just all attacked and lost a fan bearer. They're over it. Fair enough. They didn't get to see our insane win conditions. I mean, they knew we had riches, so they knew... Oops. They knew we were going to take one of the fan bearers no matter what, but they didn't see the cruel reality dawning upon them. All right, we are 3-0, heading into Game 4, still undefeated. Booty Lizard. Hello there. Solid start. We are on the draw yet again. But I like the hand. With Manifestation, I don't mind cycling the Horror pretty quickly here. Blue-white from our opponent. They could have Essence Scatter up for Manifestation because they're on the play, which would be very sad. No, I can't wait till turn 4. If I wait till turn 4, I Manifestation hold up Censor, but they have the mana to pay for the Censor anyway. I guess I can start with Seeker of Insight, and it doesn't really matter if that gets scattered. And Arena did hold for them. Or they were playing in control mode. Eternal of Harsh Truths. That kind of card our engine just cannot stand. We need to Doomfall that. Seeker of Insight isn't even that good right now because everything in our hand has cycling anyway, but I guess we get to cycle one of these Illuminations for free because I really need to hit land 4. Yeah, a free cycle of an Illumination. Sure. Yeah, Manifestation Censor is probably the line next turn. Sunset Pyramid, there's the draw 3. Looks pretty good. If they have the scatter here, we actually did get them with the turn 4 Manifestation Censor. Okay, they don't have the scatter. I could hold this Seeker of Insight back in case I cast a Censor, then I can draw a card, discard a card off of it, but again, literally everything in the hand has cycling anyway. Still, it's just going to cost us some mana to do it instead. Alright, Pyramid is just going there, getting that draw 3 going. Vizier of Tumbling Sands. I don't mind keeping the pressure on here, and this gets more cards in grave for countervailing winds. Double countervailing winds up here with the Hieroglyphic Illumination. Yeah, let's play land for turn then. And I actually think I'm just cycling this immediately. one more damage, and I can only hold one winds up anyway. Suppose I should have done that before I played my land for turn, because then I could have played this swamp and cycled this desert later. I did not put the line 2 and 2 together until I was already in combat. No shot. Unless they have their own countervailing winds, then you got it. Alright, they do not have their own countervailing winds. Solitary Camel, alright, we countered that removal for the Vile Manifestation, and we're just going to keep jamming in with our ginormous creature here. This camel does have lifelink though, so it races pretty well. They're gaining 3 life off every attack. Ooh. I almost want to mill myself with that. Juiciest Vile Manifestation possible. Sick. I got this swamp to discard in hand. I'm going to hold the Seeker back and do that instead. It's not going to block the camel, obviously, but I can still dig through the deck. So that if they do kill my manifestation, I still have a game plan here, instead of just nothing in hand. Dang. Lots of removal in their deck. Luckily, they have infinitely less cyclers than us, so the lay claim doesn't hit us that bad. They just get a 2/4, not an 8/4. Do I Doomfall their hand where they're bored? Their board is enough to kill me, but it's a 2/4 and a 3/2 versus the hand being potentially much scarier. I guess I've got the scatter for the first scary creature. Yeah, I need to slow them down. Manifestation it is. Yeah, I guess that'd be the biggest argument for Doomfalling the hand, is that, oh no, we actually need 7 mana for that. Biggest argument for Doomfalling the hand would be that we do have Winds of Rebuke that could have bounced the their enchantment and gave us our creature back. But we only had 1 more Winds in the deck, so 1 out of 15 shot. Oh, Jesus. Did I already play Rags in this match? Nope, I could draw into Rags. That's about my only out now. This board is bad. The 3/4 flyer is big enough to block anybody. Whoop. They are playing off the top, and the top deck is Seeker of Insight. But they got that Sunset Pyramid for some scrying here. You're supposed to be land 7. There's land 7 and 8. Okay, at this point, no matter what I draw into, I'm literally just playing Cruel Reality next turn, so I'm not going to tap Seeker. I'm just going to have another little blocker here. Block the 2/3. Here's the Scry from Sunset Pyramid. Scry to the bottom. Scry again. Scry to the bottom. They are really digging. Sunscourge Champion coming in because they can just make it a 4/4. Actually better to just bounce off it then so that they don't make it a 4/4. Shimmer Scale Drake. Alright, cool. See what their blind top deck was. It was not a counterspell, so Cruel Reality gets going. They do have Embalm and Eternalize cards, so it's going to take a long time for this to make them sack their whole board, but it is still going to help us keep some pressure off of us. Like, yeah, they get to make that a 4/4 now, but then they have to, like, sack Anointer Priest, and then they have to sack Seeker of Insight, and they have to embalm Anointer Priest, and they have to sack Anointer Priest again. Like, over time, the longer we survive, the more likely this is to help put the board in our favor. Exactly enough mana for these. Now I can actually double block the 4/4 as well with 2 Drakes, and I just trade a single Drake into the 4/4 flyer. Although it's only going to be flying if they attack with Aerial Guide, in which case I'll just eat the Aerial Guide. So I could actually block with Shimmer Scale Drake and Seeker of Insight if they just attack with it alone. Which feels better. Still probably just trading a drink off. Yep. Now the board's smaller for the Cruel Reality. Ketra's Monument, though, and they can pay for the Supreme Will. So every creature they cast comes with a 1/1 token now, which is really going to get around the Cruel Reality. That is not a great matchup for that card. Find Riverwinder or Drake. Or Rivulet, actually. They have 18 cards left? We only have 9 cards left. So we're going to mill out first, even if I Rivulet them. Well, no, I mill 8. They go to 10. Have I? Yeah, I compelling argumented myself. Yeah, that's what's going on here. Yeah, no, we're going to mill out first, regardless of Rivulet. So probably Riverwinder. I think the hexproof is kind of a big deal. Winds of Rebuke. A little sketchy with the number of cards I have here. By Anointer Priest or Seeker of Insight. Here's the scry from our opponent. Start just saying goodbye to 1/1s. Seeker of Insight is the sack. They do get the creature here, the Tawcrop Elite, so they get the 1/1 to sack next turn. Oh god, and a Vizier was already in hand. Seems good. Get Oketra's Monumented Nerd. Looks to be the case. A good draw. Surprised this wasn't an all attack here. I melt my rags to riches, dude. Oh, that's just how this game goes, isn't it? That's pretty rough. I think that's just like the locked in loss then. If I can't rags all the creatures. Wow. It is what it is. That's magic, baby. That's devastating. Alright, at this point, let's just mill myself out. Send a message. That Monument versus Cruel Reality was such a nasty follow-up, just right after we played it. Actually devastating. Here we are now on the draw for the millionth time for game number 5. Playing against a red deck. We're against a red deck that's on the play. I am terrified. Blue-red it is. Tormenting Voice is the first play. I would love to censor that, but we're on the draw. That would have been just a game-ending play right there. If we're on the play and we get to counter a Tormenting Voice, they just discard 2 cards for nothing. The Voice and an extra card. A little frustrating. A little frustrating. Eternal of Harsh Truths. Well, still kind of need to counter that. Stop the card draw. These are not the right colors of lands. Need a black source. I think I have to hold this desert in my hand to cycle it then, even though I have the rivulet to use it for other purposes. Yeah. At this point, just cycle it, holding up 1 scatter. There it is. So I'll have the mana for Horror of the Broken Lands next turn. What is my opponent's hand? All counter spells and burn spells and stuff? Guess let's see. Yeah, counterspell. They let it resolve though, so that probably means burn spell to kill it. Unquenchable Thirst, sure. Burning Fist Minotaur. 1 little first striker. I kind of have to Doomfall it. Like, I want to look at their hand pretty bad, but, like, also by killing this thing, my deck doesn't have a lot of removal for resolved cards. I guess I have 2 Winds of Rebuke, I've got another Doomfall, I've got Rags to Riches, Cruel Reality. Yeah, no, let's see what's going on. I mean, there's definitely non-land cards in their hand with how they've been playing. Thirst, Rebuke, Serpent. They're just gonna thirst everything we play, is the plan. Okay, just exile the 6/5 then, right? Scatter up for the next threat they draw, and we're under pretty low amounts of pressure here at that rate. If I play a Drake, it just gets thirsted anyway. So let's Illuminate. Okay, those are not draws. I guess we're digging the clump out of the way here to find our spells. Ominous Sphinx. Absolutely not. There's Cruel Reality. Alright, that's going to be disgusting. They can Winds of Rebuke it, but then they're going to need a counterspell for the Cruel Reality later. Otherwise, that is such a win condition for this game in particular. This matchup for sure, but the way this game's playing out, they have no more creatures in hand. Yeah, that's just an auto lose for the very creature light control deck mirror match. They just can't make enough creatures. They just lose the life really quick. And that's the concession from our opponent. We are 4-1 heading into game number 6. We did it. We're on the play. Let's go, everybody. I'm gonna get greedy here. Try to draw one land for these illuminations rather than cycling immediately. If I had countervailing winds in hand where we need to fill that grave, probably insta-cycle. But here, if I don't hit land 4 on time, I'll just Supreme Will for it. Ideally, I won't have to do that, so I can Supreme Will something else, but we'll see. Blue-black mirror match. Vile Manifestation is the play. Well, we're Doom falling next turn, because that cannot stay on board. When you see a blue-black deck from your opponent in this format. As you've seen, from our deck, that can be a 2-mana 13-4. So, that's just a big no-no. Rags to Riches is probably pretty weak in this matchup. As you can tell from the blue-black decks that we've played, we are very resilient to that card, but it's also because we drafted the Rags to Riches, so we avoided 2 toughness and less cards. So yeah, there you go, my Asmic Mummy does die to Rags. Alright. Not gonna Rags a single creature. I'll wait a little bit, take a couple points of damage to hold up my counterspell for now. Oh no, they're Grixis? Did they open the Bolas? Are we gonna see a Bolas by the end of this return trip, but then it's not even our Bolas? That would be so depressing. Genuinely. Tragic. I'm just gonna keep holding up this counterspell. Well, I definitely want to hold it up at 7 mana from Grixis, because that's when Bolas comes out. Yeah, no, it's probably safest to just hold it here still, though, because I could just Illumination again. I could take 2 and then Illumination. Definitely want to have a counterspell left for when they play their 7th land. I Asmic Mummy again. I guess I Illumination again then, right? I definitely don't counter that, because I can now Rags 2 creatures. I think I Illumination. Just have more options for when that resolves of what to discard. Land 6 out of 7. And a 7-drop win condition. And I have Rags to Riches being a 7-drop win condition. We keep the land, we ditch the Drake. I could take 4 damage, and then if I top deck 1 more land, I have the mana to cast Rags holding up Supreme Will. But for 2 mana, they can't counter Rags with anything in the format, I'm pretty sure, so I'm just gonna Rags hold up Scatter. And then hopefully they just follow up with a creature. If I don't have to scatter, we can cycle this Drake because our 7-drops are so good. Gravedigger. I don't have to scatter that, but I think I'm going to. There's an argument for not, just so that I can cycle the Drake and make it more likely to have land 7 while they're fully tapped out. But I don't really like them getting the 2-for-1 that it gives. Okay, Naga Oracle, and they're still pretty much fully tapped out. It's not a 2-for-1, it's just a 2-4 body. Cruel Reality will make them sack it. Yeah, we let it resolve and then we Cruel Reality them. Cycle the Drake. If that doesn't hit the land, we'll have to Supreme Will to the land, but we can Cruel Reality, and next turn they'll have 6 mana, not 7. So if they do have a Bolas in hand, we won't lose to the Bolas. Oh my god, and even if they do, Cruel Reality is going to make them sacrifice Bolas? Jesus. Well, I guess it depends. The Bolas in this format can cast spells out of our deck for free, so if they find a creature out of their deck, they can just sack that to the Cruel Reality. But again, that's all only if they had 6 mana this turn and then a 7th next to play a Bolas. Again, I'm pretty confident they have a Bolas. That would be the most reasonable exploitation for this mana base. But they might not have it in hand. Anyway, there we go. Land 7. Rip opponent. It's time for the Cruel Reality to set in. So good in these against these less aggressive decks. I just don't have as high of a creature count. Fantastic. Yeah, this is kind of sweet because we have like a finisher that's really good against low creature count decks and a card that's really good against high creature count like aggro decks. Really nice. And we'll just hold up the Supreme Will for the rest of the game so that we don't get bow lost. And the rest of the game shouldn't even be that long. Cruel Reality alone is going to deal 5 to them a turn. Vile Manifestation is probably going to deal like 5 a turn. Oh my god. Yeah, it is. So they're on a really fast clock. Well, that's pretty cool. Abandoned Sarcophagus, so all the cyclers in their grave can be cast now. It's pretty solid. Pretty solid. Compelling Argument, mill me 5, sure. Manifestation's a little bigger now. Shimmer Scale Drake's the draw. Just holding up all our instants. Winds of Rebuke. If I Supreme Will this, I don't get to Supreme Will their Bolas, but again, their Bolas will die to a Cruel Reality. I'm just gonna make sure this damage sets in. Maybe I should have cycled the Drake, but if this dies, I want to have another threat. Alright, they didn't even get to do their Bolas if they had it, but again, we didn't see a single red spell from them. Either they're splashing for Bolas. I mean, there's other options, of course. They could be splashing for some removal, like a Magma Spray, an Open Fire. Trial of Zeal would be the strongest one. But I mean, you gotta think when you see Grixis in this format. There's a Bolas in there somewhere. Kind of sad we didn't get to see it, but at the same time, might be for the best, because if we did, it would have been even more tragic. I would have had to kill Bolas, but I love Bolas. Would have had to counter him. Super rude. All right, we are 5-1 now. Officially going to be in the money yet again for this format for our final draft. Feels spectacular, but we'll see if we can't take it any farther, get super great rewards out of this as we head into game number 7. All right, here we are on the draw with our mono black hand. Super, super awkward, but if they're aggro, that Rags to Riches in the opener is still great. I think we got to take the mulligan, though. All right, mono blue hand, but mono blue is more reasonable for this deck than mono black, and I can just ditch the Vile Manifestation. If I put it on bottom, I have nothing in my deck that shuffles. That means I will never play it this game, and it's one of the best cards in the deck, so I'm almost tempted to get rid of something else, which is rough. I mean, worst case scenario, we can cycle it for 2, so I'll ditch the Riverwinder. Okay, with Countervailing Winds, I'm definitely going for just insta-cycle towards ideally a swamp, but an island works fine. Blue-white, and our opponent starts with Binding Mummy to get aggressive, and there's our swamp. Vile Manifestation's a 1/4 right now. I'm a little tempted to wait till we have 5 mana so I can hold up a counterspell alongside the Manifestation to keep it alive. It'll be at least a 2/4. Because we've got the Countervailing Winds to end up in our grave as well. Okay, Riddle Form. I don't have 3 mana up yet because I'm on the draw. I can't do anything about that regardless. Okay. I've got 3. I probably have to Supreme Will first so that I have enough cards in grave for the Countervailing Winds later. Could eternalize that, which is annoying, but go with the initial body. And I can do it with Countervailing Winds to have Supreme Will instead. More flexible. Or I could just scatter it. These do counter non-creatures. Yeah, we'll go for the scatter. Okay. There we go. We have all the lands we need to play Manifestation, holding up a 3-mana counter next turn. Kefnet's Monument. It's kind of annoying, right? They get to tap and stun a creature every turn. That feels annoying enough, and this will put another Cycler in my grave for Manifestation to be bigger. Down to 11. Yeah, I mean, we might just die because we couldn't counter the Riddle Form. Because we were on the draw. Riddle Form's really hard for this deck to deal with, because we need instant speed removal. Or we need the counter at the right time, and it's impossible to have the counter at the right time if you only have 2 lands up because you're on the draw. Eternal of Harsh Truths, that feels worth a counter. Yeah, I would have tapped the Manifestation, and then it would potentially draw a bunch of cards later. I'm stopping 2 damage by holding this back. I'm dealing 3 by attacking, but I'm at 11 and they're at 20. I guess they just eternalize the Sunscourge champion and a zombie hits the board and they tap Manifestation anyway, so we're kind of in a rough spot. Where we're just highly unlikely to block no matter what. Eternalize is an ability, it doesn't count as casting. So I can't counter the Eternalize if they just eternalize a zombie pre-combat. Aven Initiate. Yeah, I'm under more than enough pressure to have to counter that. I have some really good 7-drops in the deck, so I'm not going to Rivulet myself here, but I could see a little bit of an argument. Speaking of good 7-drops, there's a Rags. Oh, I don't have double black anyway. I was going to say, is it worth it just to kill the 2/2? Because I'm at 9 and it'll tap things? Not if I don't have double black, then it's not even an option. Oh boy, it's still not an option. I don't want to Doomfall to single 2/2 when I have Rags anyway, so let's see the hand. Compulsory Rest Naga Oracle. Alright, make sure that the Manifestation sticks around. But now their only options next turn is basically make a zombie. Well, they could play the Naga Oracle instead. But if I don't attack with Manifestation, then they'll definitely Sunscourge Champion, make the zombie, tap the Manifestation. Down to 7. Just Naga Oracle, set up the draws. 2 to the grave, 1 to the top. Compelling Argument is the draw. I can mill myself 9, and if all 9 cards are cyclers, we win. I guess if 8 of the 9, because Argument itself is a cycler. But I can also mill them, so whatever they surveilled is gone. Yeah, not having the second black is probably maybe deadly here. I could also just cycle the Compelling Argument if I think it's better to just draw a card blind here. Drawing the card blind could lead me to the swamp. And plenty other options. It's interesting. I think I'm cycling this. Okay, we do hit the swamp. Blow up the Binding Mummy. And then steal one of their creatures next turn with Riches. Shoot, I guess I still should have Rivulet Self-Milled. I did not count up how much mana I had there. I had exactly enough to Rivulet Self-Mill too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, because I can do that and still have the 7 for Riches. I should have done that on the attack for more damage there. Could have been the difference between a 2-turn kill and a 3-turn kill. Oh, they top-decked Compulsory Rest off the Surveil. Gross. Well, shoot. No reason to mill ourselves anymore, so I guess it actually is a benefit that I didn't reveal it myself. Oh wait, I could have revealed them though to get rid of the card they surveilled to the top. Give them a blind draw instead of the best of the top three. Give me somebody. The 3-1 it is. Let's see what the blind top deck is. If it is a non-creature spell, we lose. Because then they get to attack with both. I have to chump an Oracle and go to 1. Okay, it's not a non-creature spell. Oh my god. It's a mythic rare god. Desert of the Mindful. Super sweet earlier. Just another cycler. Scatter 1 turn late. Because obviously I could have held up Scatter instead of Riches. Well, I guess I couldn't have. I would have been dead, right? Yeah, we were kind of doomed here then. No matter the sequence. Well, I can trump Naga Oracle for a turn, I guess. So catcher can't attack unless they have 3 other creatures. They can only play 1 off of her ability or Eternalize abilities or anything like that. Alright. Super dead. 5-2 heading into game 8. Alright, here we are on the draw for game number 8. I have to cycle this Riverwinder for sure. Do not want a 7-drop this early. And the absolute classic on the draw, so I can't counter their 2-drop. So the 2-mana 3-1 is just going to get some damage in here. Absolutely beating down. We get to counter the 3-2 at least. Wait until turn 4 to play the Seeker, so I still get to have my instants up, Scatter and Rebuke. I think I actually Supreme Will this so that I can have the Scatter left over with the Seeker. And they're green-white, so they should be a really creature-heavy deck where Scatter should still have targets. Winds of Rebuke's very good against green's removal in this format. It's the enchant a creature and have that creature fight something. Right, Catcher's Avenger's ability is really good. It's still going to get damage in every other turn thanks to the Exert. Cultivator, sure. Can have a Rampant Growth. You cannot have a big Hippo, though. Doomfall has arrived. Okay, I have no counterspell to hold up anymore. The only thing I'd be holding up is this to counter a fight spell. I wouldn't mind if they fight my 1-3, and they wouldn't be big enough to fight the 4-4 profitably, so we'll just play the 4-4. Edifice of Authority. Stop my attack here. That's going to be pretty annoying. Doomfall only hits creatures. It's not going to do anything to the Edifice. We know they have 2 non-lands in hand. Unless they're really sandbagging their mana. It's probably just Doomfall them, and then draw a card, discard a card with Seeker. Farm to market, impeccable timing. Well, that's an easy farm to market. Farm to market is just bigger and better impeccable timing. It's impeccable timing that also draws 2, discards 2, and also kills any size creature instead of just the 3 toughness or less. Okay, time for Edifice of Authority to take over the game. Lock down the Horror of Broken Lands, stop it from attacking for a few turns, and then they get to stop it from attacking and blocking so they can get past it. Oh, there's that incredible Winds of Rebuke here. Although, what are they, just going to try to kill the Seeker of Insight? I guess. Milling the Rags to Riches is a little sad. Rags would be pretty good in this matchup. And now they know I have Riches engraved, so they're just never going to sack Cultivator. So if I ever cast Riches, I'm just stealing a 0/3 that has no abilities on my board. So that's kind of rough. It's not what we wanted to see. To the point where I might hold on to the Desert to cycle it instead of getting to the 7 mana. Because again, stealing a Cultivator is doing almost nothing. Only reason to play this Desert would be in case I draw my Cruel Reality. Guess it gives me more mill for the Rivulet, but it's not going to be a... Probably not going to be a mill matchup, right? I guess they're edificing me all game. Maybe it will. Yeah, maybe just sit behind all this stuff. Ooh, whenever they cast a creature, get a +2/+2 trample. That's sketchy enough to look for a counter, I think. That is not a counter. I got a Seeker of Insight. Let's hold on to this island. If I scatter, I now get to cycle my island away. Yeah, we're really just hanging out right now. Oh. Drawn to a combat trick here? Finish off the Drake? Fight spell or something? Oh yeah, they've got the impeccable timing. It's still a 1/1. Fine to get it out of the way. Instead of going down to 8 here, or losing a creature without getting rid of any cards. A little embarrassing, I forgot about the impeccable timing, but I think that was probably the right line regardless. +2 trample to the cultivator, that's very funny. Technically not a defender, so it's going to get that Rona's Monument value going. Alright, they don't have anything else to buff it, so they just don't attack into the Seeker anyway. Honestly, I guess I'm just taking the Cultivator. They can't do Ronus Monument nonsense with it anymore, and I get to draw a discard a card for casting this. And since Oketcher's Avenger blocks are just trumps anyway, that'll just give me another trump. It's really just 7 mana to draw a card, discard a card. I guess I take 1 hit from Avenger here, because they can shut off the Horror and exert the Avenger. And not exert the Avenger on this attack now. Defiant Greatmaw. Get the trample. Does this remove counters from itself when it attacks? Nope. It's just a 2/3 by itself. Yeah, that's a big hit. Down to 6. At some point, realistically speaking, they have to draw a land, right? At some point. On 4 lands for like 10 turns. One 3 blocker is actually decent against the 2/3. I'm not gonna go for the just blind draw discard. I am at 6 life, so every blocker could count. Hey, there we go. Speaking of lands. Ooh, the 6-drop monitor. Big boy. Well, we get to kill the Great Maw. At the cost of 1 horror, I think. Yeah, that feels best. No other way to kill it without putting the horror at risk. I'm gonna if my frickin' Cruel Reality is in the bottom like 5, then I guess we lose, but otherwise Cruel Reality will find the win for us. Man. Come on, Cruel Reality. Come on, Cruel Reality. We're just gonna straight up die. Because it's too deep. We might even die to combat damage before we draw it, which would be insanely surprising because of how close we are to dying to mill. But that monitor, especially with Ronos's Monument, big issue. No, I'm good on that one. I would like to keep creatures. That's just gonna mill the Cruel Reality. That's straight up just gonna mill it. Man, I can rebuke the Edifice, so they can't shut off Manifestation as a blocker for some time. But then I just mill the Cruel Reality. I really don't have much of another choice. Oh, I didn't mill the Cruel Reality. It's in the bottom 5. That's our only win con. Oh, why did I do that? I just empty-handed draw discarded. Whoops. I mean, it did dig closer to the Cruel Reality, so there's that. It's in the bottom 4. All right, we missed out on a Doomfall that would have gotten rid of the Avenger, I guess. But that doesn't really matter because we're dying to mill before we die to Avenger, damaging us. Okay, we lose. Cruel Reality's too far deep. God dang it, man. That's tragic. Bottom 3 cards. As well at this point, count unless you pay 22 for fun. You're so far down, Cruel Reality. You're so far down. It's too late. They sack this, then they sack this. Well, no, they sack this, then they sack this, then they sack this, and then I'm milled out. That Edifice of Authority just did too much work, and Cruel Reality was too far deep. Tragic ending to the final draft of Amonkhet Remastered, but still a 5-win run. Just rough to get the losses in a clump at the end here. And rough to lose in that manner. Your win condition just hiding from you. They drew 6 lands all game. I guess, no, they drew 8 lands all game. Nine cards is not enough for them to mill out first. And I cycled the desert in the early game because we didn't have black. If it weren't for cycling the desert, we still could have milled them out first. Barely. Right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, 13. They would have 1 card left. They actually would still have more cards in library than us. Dang. They have 1 card more. Oh, I'm dead on board right now regardless. That's because I missed out on the Doomfall earlier, but again, it was too late at that point. The draw discard, miss my Doomfall. Would have got me either way. Alright, the Cruel Reality. I guess I'm slightly not dead. Because Edifice doesn't shut off the Drake as a blocker yet, so I can chump. Four cards left. Yeah, no, I guess I was right. Because I would have had an empty library, they would have had 4 cards. This would have been the final 4 mill from the second desert. If we just hadn't played Desert of the Mindful, we actually would have milled them out before we died. If Cruel Reality were at least like 4 cards higher in the deck, we would have won. If it was above like the bottom 7 or 8, I would have won. Yeah, tragic. 5 and 3 is going to be the final record for Amonkhet Remastered. Pretty cool format, really sweet flavor. That's the part that I really like about this this format, this set. And it is cool to be able to do some more controlling stuff, so nice to show off that archetype. Actually, a few times this time around. Would have liked to see this deck do a little bit better. I think it was capable of doing better. Our losses had some rough draws, some rough endings, but there are some weaknesses to this deck, of course. With only one Rags, the amount of removal for resolved threats is pretty low. You know, just the two Doomfalls and the bounce spells like Winds of Rebuke. So we can fall behind early to aggressive decks and die that way. So that's probably one of the biggest, scariest flaws of the deck. But generally speaking, over the course of the long game, this has all the tools it needs to win the vast majority of the time. Just sometimes you draw them in a really awkward order like that last game. So, yeah, generally, again, pretty great looking deck here. The biggest flaws to early aggro deaths, and I think only one of our deaths was actually an early aggro deck. But I could be wrong on that. My memory is terrible. But that is going to end that draft. We'll grab our 1,600 gems, our 4-packs, and move on. Tomorrow we're going to be doing one final artifact remix draft, and then we have Duskmorn early access after that. So Duskmorn is just around the corner, and I'm super pumped for that, so stay tuned if you're interested. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for supporting the channel, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it and you're interested in seeing some more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more on your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.